livelihood. And trust me, that's exactly what you do when you don't pay attention to those tax returns. Now, I gave my testimony for today. Charmaine, tell them if they are in a situation where they've had their taxes done, they did not get any paperwork like you mentioned, what are the things that they should do at this point? Or is there anything that they can do at this point?
Typically, if you've dealt with a reputable tax professional, you are able to go back to that person. For my business, I'm here year round. I don't open up for 4 months and you can't reach out to me after that. I'm here, I'm accessible. So you should be able to go to that person and say, hey, I need my paperwork. I need to see what's on my return. That person should also be able to answer any questions that you may have regarding that return. It's literally like dissecting your tax return with a fine-tooth comb. You need to go through there, see what's in there. If you don't know, ask. And if there's any objection, if there's any hesitation, then that's a clear sign. There's a clear indication that something is wrong. So it's I do free consultations. Most reputable tax professionals will do a free consultation, sit down with you and look over what's on your return. And then if you find erroneous errors, if you find mistakes, then at that point, it's best to do something about it. Don't just let it linger. Even if you just filed it this past tax season or the past two tax seasons, always try to get the problem fixed before they find it. If the IRS finds it, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have a really serious issue.
Thank you, Kelvin, for joining as well. Thank you, everybody that is just joining live. Please ask your questions. Again, Charmaine is here to answer those questions. We are going to be answering questions all day. We're going to be monitoring this page all day. For those of you that have questions that you don't want to put out in the open in the comments, which I certainly understand, you may reach out to us and let us know through the inbox, and we will make sure to answer those questions. So I want to point out just really quickly. So we've talked a lot about that, and I think it boils down to just being vigilant. Always be willing to check behind somebody, even if they're a professional. This is something that, and I know people think that, and I see this actually with being an attorney a lot, that people will say, well, I never ask the questions. Like when they come to me after something has happened, I would say, well, did you ask them this, or what did they say about this? And they will tell me they just didn't ask. We do have a question on the floor. Someone asked, will the lottery still be taxable?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question again?
They asked, will the lottery still be taxable?
Yes, and here's the thing with the lottery. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail regarding the lottery. If you win the lottery, you have to report that. Don't win the lottery, get the money, and not report that on your taxes. I have so many people that I see that they win that money, they don't report it, and then they end up getting a letter regarding that. Also, if you play the lottery, you are entitled to deduct a percentage of that as gambling losses. There are also other stipulations regarding that, but I know you didn't ask for all that to be answered, but yes, there are credits that you can take, but it's also important to report if you do win.
And that's great information to know, because I'm going to tell you, I never would have thought that there was any type of deduction or any type of loss. Thank you so much for joining us, Michelle. I would never have thought that there was any credit or anything that they were going to give for gambling losses. So that's really great. Well, let me ask you this. Does that also work with the casino?
Yes, it is considered a gambling loss. And as I say, with any deduction, you have to have the proof. I'm not going to take your word for it. I'm sorry. It's not that I don't trust my clients, but I have to have the proof to protect myself as well as them. So if anything ever comes into question, I can pull this out and say, hey, here are the losses. These are the amounts. This is the month and the year, and it was during the year that it was supposed to be filed. So it basically protects and covers you. So yeah, you have to have the proof, but as long as you have the proof, you are able to claim that.
Awesome. So let me ask you this too, because I know that it's so much in this, and I know you're probably gonna get tired of being on this, but I want to shift for just a second, and I really want to talk about again, guys. Please ask questions. We are taking them right here in real time. Those of you that are watching on the replay, you can still leave your questions. We will be monitoring this feed all day today. You can also send us inbox questions, but I wanted to talk a little bit about, let's talk about the issue of child support, because I see this a lot. I see it on both sides. So the question becomes, how does child support affect your income tax?
Actually, child support affects your income tax in quite a few different ways. The main number one thing that I see is if I have a client that comes in, and I'm sure they have to know that they owe child support. So what happens is that if you owe child support and you are currently in default, that actual return that you was expecting, it will be taken. It's called an offset. And what happens is they take that tax return from you and they send it to the state, like typically, for example, I'm in Georgia. So in Georgia, they will hold that return, I want to say 120 days. And what they do is they hold that for any type of discrepancies or any errors. So let's say if you just paid that child support back current, but in lieu of you paying it, it wasn't enough time to notify the offset Treasury division, so they still ended up taking your tax return. So that's the purpose of them holding that return. However, if you actually owe, they're going to take that return. So don't think that, well, you're going to file your return and you're going to avoid not paying your child support, because you are obligated to pay it, and they will take your return.
And listen, people, this is not a reason not to get paid. We talked about this yesterday about getting paid under the table. That's not a reason to do that. The other side of it is that I know when there are divorce decrees in place, so you have alimony, you have child support, there are certain things like daycare, there are certain things like medical expenses, and all of these things that oftentimes come out of a divorce settlement. How does child support rank? Like, for example, can you deduct child support as an expense like you would daycare or any of those things?
Daycare can be deducted. Any continuing education expenses can be deducted, but child support itself, no, that cannot be deducted. Contrary to what anyone else tells you, that cannot be deducted.
Okay, now we also have a question. This is from a person who typically does their own taxes, and they are saying, what I really want to know is, what are my best resources for staying abreast of amendments to the tax law from year to year?
I find a lot of people that I run into say, hey, I don't need a tax professional because I do my own taxes. If you have a job at Zaxby's or a fast food restaurant or somewhere where you're making $10,000, $12,000, and all you have to do is just file just this 1040 easy, great. That's not a problem. But when you are making $25,000, $30,000 and on up, it's important to consult with a tax professional, because here's the thing: there's over 400 to 500 credits. And as a tax professional, a true tax professional, it's our job to know every last one of those credits. It's our job to also be aware on any updates regarding those credits. So to answer your question, it's very hard. As this is my profession, this is what I do full time. I don't have any other job. This is my full-time job. So I'm constantly making myself knowledgeable. I'm constantly going to trainings. I'm constantly updating myself on all the different tax laws. But as a person that files their one return every year, I'm just going to be honest with you, it's very, very hard. You can go on the IRS website and you can sign up for their updates. But if you're not really just educating yourself on every tax law that comes out, it's going to be fairly hard for you to be able to be aware of what you can and cannot claim from year to year.
The other thing about tax law is that it is very convoluted. It's just like any other law, any other regulation. It is very, very, very convoluted. I always promote working with a professional. But again, I know lots of people that do their taxes every year. Thanks for joining, David. I know lots of people that do their taxes from year to year. They don't have a problem. But guess what? If there's ever an audit, if you're ever in a situation like the situation that I mentioned earlier, even if you do your own taxes, how are you going to get yourself out of that situation? And oftentimes, it's going to cost a whole lot more for that tax professional to now come in and look through 5 years of returns and 5 years of the things that you've done done yourself. But I think the direct answer is there are a lot of trainings out there, right, Charmaine, that people can go to if they want to. Give her an idea of maybe the cost of some of those trainings that you go to every year.
I would say the minimum is around $200 and upwards of about $500, and that's per training.
And so that's how many times a year, though?
The huge one, the IRS Forum, that's once a year. However, usually in major cities, you can find one at least once a month. That's going to be like a continuing education. There's always online webinars that you can attend. There's a lot of free resources out there, as well as a lot that you pay for. And I feel like as a tax professional, it's an investment back into myself, my clients, and my business, because I can't knowingly sit in front of any client that comes in here and not know what I'm talking about or not be able to help them as best as possible. So it's to me, yes, sometimes it could be a lot, but at the same time, I feel like it's worth it in the long run.
And that's great advice. In the comments, guys, I put the direct website to the IRS, which is irs.gov. It is a very confusing website. Mm-hmm. I'm going to tell you, for people that don't like to read a whole lot of words, it's not the website for you. But for people that are doing their own taxes, these are some things that you need to really. This is a website that you may want to familiarize yourself with as well, because they will put out what the new regulations are going to be. But there's typically not a plain language discussion about it right there on the website. So you are going to have to seek out a lot more resources. I mean, my thought process is this: if you're going to pay, let's say $500, for example, to go to an IRS training so that you can learn to do your own taxes, you may as well pay somebody $300 to do them.
Yes.
It's sort of like, because one thing about it, a lot of those trainings, they are not free. It's very difficult because on these webinars, you can't ask questions. Usually they're on demand, but I would say check out the irs.gov website. If you do have some questions that you cannot answer, I would encourage you to reach out to a tax consultant like Charmaine for guidance and for more direction with doing your taxes. Now, one other area I want us to cover that I've seen on a scheme is, and I know we're talking about tax schemes, is that this whole thing about like tithes and offerings, and this isn't a religious discussion, but I've seen that there are more and more people that are claiming tithes and offerings and givings and charitable deductions because they understand that this is a full deduction. Talk with us a little bit about what you've seen in your practice that gets people into trouble with that.
A lot of times I have people say, well, for example, hey, I pay X amount of dollars every time I go to church. Okay, great. So where's your format that your church would have given you to show those deductions? That should be just on a standard. Some churches, they print it out, they give it to you, it has a tax ID number on it. It has your amount that you've paid throughout the year. Oftentimes I find people that go to other places to get their taxes prepared, they basically max out on the charitable contributions because they are aware that not only raises their federal return, it also really raises a significant amount on the state return. But here's the thing to that. If you don't have that proof, the state is cracking down on it. The IRS